Okay. So as you know, the smartest person alive. Look how smart he is. After seeing how handsome he was, he ran away.
Okay, we resume. So I hope you all can hear me. So we're making a resumption on what we were doing a while ago. So I hope all of you can hear me. So we continue, we're talking about the API technology. So categorizing switches based on what the applications side are, including cases like industrial application, including cases like you would do application of switch in flat design switches. You have the hardened switches where you with a high tolerance for power surges. We have gigabit switches, all ports that are gigabit. The advantages of our switches include high buffer memory and be able to do flow control, and it's more of into the security and not the IT world. Okay, we resume now. We're going to talk about the Epue switches. So you have the Epue switches. So the Epue switches are the ones that could do distance of up to 800 meters. So for those of us maybe who are wondering how can I use a camera in long distance, so you can use 800 meters using just a normal UTP cable with the RJ45. So typically all the switches that do Epue are indicated as LR, long range switches. And so for this case, maybe for the naming rule, you can check LR2110. So 10 total ports, 8 power PoE ports. So you're getting 8 PoE ports and a power output of 120 watts. Also in terms of bandwidth, so if you're doing a UTP with the long Epue switches, like at 100 Mbps, so you'd be able to achieve 100 Mbps in less than 300 meters. And then for 300 meters to add 800 meters while you're doing Epue technology, you're going to achieve 10 Mbps. So 10 Mbps is very good for in case you are installing a camera with up to 5 MP to 12 MP. Yeah, you can do 12 MP. So well, if you are doing coaxial, you can reach 100 Mbps for 400 meters and 10 Mbps for 400 to 1000 meters. So maybe you're seeing if you want to install cameras in buildings, etc., and you don't want to use those multiple switches, you know the switches to go for. We also have the non-PoE access switches. So these are the switches that don't have PoE power. So for the non-PoE access switches, you can check. You can have these ones. These are the switches that you typically use on the desktop side, or maybe for the data, for the now IT world. You can use this one for the IT world. At the same time, you can use it in the security. For the non-PoE access switches, we have this one. You can see they don't have the power output, unlike these other switches. So you can see power output of 240 ATC, but for these cases, we don't have the power output for the non-access PoE switches. When we're talking about the classification of switches, we had access switches, core and aggregation. So we are done with the access switches side. So now we're going to talk about the aggregation switches, then we go to the core. So like in classification of a network, in transmission side, we have, let me just get onto the slide. Okay, you can't seem to locate the classification of the network switches, but basically you're talking about the access switches. That's the switches that connect to the end devices. Then you're going to talk about the access, aggregation, then the core. So you're going to talk about now the aggregation switches, which lies in between the access switches and the core switches. So for the aggregation switches, they are typically naming convention is S5. So if you see S series. So if you see a series and also this PFS series of switches, so this one is a high-end switch. This is a layer 3 managed switch. So these are the aggregation switches. So typical functionalities for the aggregation switches include even purposes like routing. So it can do the router functionalities. So you have VLANs, STP, aggregation, quality of service, network management protocol, and do even routings for the different networks. So it can act as a router on this side. So the application for such case switches include SMB. So if you have a small, medium to a large network, you can use such switches. You can even have ports of up to 48. So maybe these ones you can be checking on your side. You can check them on our security and maybe do a recommendation for such products to the clients. So the speeds for the aggregation can reach even up to 10 gig for SFP ports. So 10 gig fiber. Then our last category of switches is the core switches. So the core switches are that lie into the beneath side of the network. So this one is the core switches are the ones that are ideal for very large networks. So in terms of performances and switching, it's very powerful. So for the cases for core switches, in case maybe you need a core switch and need to acquire the same, this one now you need to engage us so that you can check on how we can get one for you. Suggest a product, specified product for the same, because this one is a high end and a high cost switches. For the accessories for the transmission, we have PoE adapters. So the PoE adapters they are used usually with wireless devices. We have PoE extenders. We have BNC cables and long-range BNC for those that are doing 1,000 PoE over coax. So we also do SFP modules. So you just need to know for the certification purposes, just know that what products we offer for your case in the application side, but no need to dwell into the more of the little details of the configuration of such, or maybe the little details of information. Maybe as we advance with the certification part of it, we'll know what we need to be knowing on specified part. So for the naming rule for the switches that we saw before, we have so the same way we're doing naming rule for other products like IPC and recorders. So the naming rules for switches are, as you can see, so 3 and 4, 3, 4, and 5 we have, those are layer 2 switches, and the 6 is layer 3 switches. So layer 2 plus switches is more of just like layer 3 switches. Just like layer 3 switches, but with a bit minimal, small distinct characteristic. So if you see a numbering like the 31, you see one is a one uplink port. So the uplink port is typically the port that you use to interconnect switches or maybe forward traffic to the core side of the network. So the last part for PoE output. So depending on your usage in the power for the front end devices, you can check. You can calculate which power is required for your devices so that you can suggest a better product or maybe purchase a good product for the same. So maybe this one you can can get to check it by yourself later. Okay, maybe just for the case demonstration, we have project photos for different applications. So you can see we have aggregation switches here. We have hardened switches. So the typical users. Also, we have here EVS. So for those of maybe of us who don't know EVS, this one is an EVS and an NVR at the bottom, maybe power supply. So this one's a core switch. Okay, maybe just at practical applications for the switches. So in a small site surveillance system with 200 cameras, you can have your system in such design where you have the access switches that provide power to the camera. Then you have aggregation switches. So for this case, you do not need a core switch. So the core switches are used for the high-end network configuration. So you'd basically connect optical fiber. So for this case, they're using optical fiber for this side. So the optical fiber connects the different access layer switches to the aggregation layer switches. So this is how you do configure the same. Or maybe you can use the uplink gigabit port to this side. So for a medium-sized surveillance solution where you have 300 to 500 IPCs, you can have additional core switches. So you can have additional core switches that will enhance the performance for the network. So you can see we have core switches at this point. So this is basically how you design your network. Like the speed, as you go up the network, you have better speeds. That's why we use fiber at this point. So for a large-sized surveillance system, so you have more core switches in the network. So for the cases where you had 500 to 1,000 IP cameras, you can apply the same. Okay. Now we're going to talk about wireless. So wireless devices. We also provide wireless devices for those of us maybe we didn't know. We have wireless devices that are in the category for transmissions devices in Dahua. So the application for wireless devices include rural sites, in sites where the terrain is not good. In construction sites where the construction is not yet complete, you can do wireless, and in energy and transportation systems. So depending on where I think most of you have met a scenario where you need to do wireless in cases where you don't want to do digging, in cases where you need to cross the road and you don't have that budget for digging and laying the cables. You can do wireless. You can go for wireless. So the basic scenario where for wireless configuration is you'd have different stations. So these ones are just like those for ubiquity. So it's an access point that connects to each other. And maybe another applications for wireless that they have not talked about is elevator. So if you have cameras at elevator and you don't need to have those wires interrupted, you can have wireless device on the top of elevator vehicle and the other one at the rooftop. So you have constant communication between wireless devices. So the basic structure for wireless configuration is you can have one wireless device connecting to one wireless device, or you can have one wireless device connecting to multiple devices. For PMPT, so point to multi-point cases, you can do wireless. So you can have different sites connecting to one point, or maybe the central point for communication. So for point to point, you can use just two consumer premise equipment. So just this one is cost-effective side. So for these others, point to multipoint, you can have the central one having high power and more capability to receive multiple signals from multiple devices. So for back-to-back, so back-to-back scenarios means you have extending the range for the wireless devices. So the configuration is like you're getting the signal from one point to another, one point to another. So this one will just act as a bridge between these two network segments. So maybe we can check a case scenario. So you can see typical application scenario. We have this one's a road, if I'm not wrong. So we are getting signals from different sites. So these are the different sites that we are getting signal from. Like this one is doing 2 points to 1 point. Then we have a switch that connects all these central multi-point devices. Then we can have optical or Ethernet cable to, depending on the traffic that you have in the system, to do a surveillance center. So the same way our switches are optimized for the security. So our wireless devices are also optimized for the security industry, not IT. So as much as you can use it in IT, it's better to use them in the security industry because it will be an overkill for using a security-based device in the IT world. So maybe we dive now into the series that we get. So for the naming convention for wireless series, so the basic, just to know the basic. So before we saw that we had PFS. So PFS was switch. Now PFW is wireless. PF wireless, PF switch. So public fitting wireless. So this is the wireless devices that we have. So in terms of device design, we have such cases. And maybe some of the features for those of us who have been doing wireless, for the multiplexing that they support, we have TDMA, time division multiple access. So maybe for those of us who understand about CDMA, TDMA, and other multiplexing technologies, you can know which multiplexing technologies suits where and which one is very good. So cases like banner software features in terms of internal alignment is SNMP, etc. So if you have done configuration of maybe devices like Ubiquiti and other wireless systems, you'd realize that they have the web-based where you do alignment for different wireless devices. So the same way is what we offer on configuration for these wireless devices. So most, if not all, of Dahua products are easy to configure, user-friendly. So if you are worried whether you have issues like how will I configure, it's easy. It's easy. Even the products come with a manual installed in their packaging. For small and medium projects, then maybe for this list you can check for yourself. If you're interested more in wireless scenarios, you can check this document. You can just do a screenshot and confirm on them. So in terms of management, you can see the transmission distance maximum is greater or equal to 77 kilometers, etc. So not to talk about this more. So maybe let me just talk about a light on something. So you can see these on our consumer premise equipment. So the same way you'd have access switches. So this one is more like access switches. Then the base station is more of like the aggregation or the core side. So the CPEs connect to the base station. And you can see the base station, the speed is gigabit Ethernet. So we have fast Ethernet and gigabit Ethernet. So this can do multi-point access CPEs. So I hope that is clear. And the protocol supports it more. So the protocol standard is 802.1.1an. So based on this, you can easily know whether it can connect to third-party wireless devices. But it's good to do the practical side of it. For medium size, this one is with the small-sized projects. So if you're going to do medium-sized or large projects, we recommend these products. So for the large size project, we have specified models that can do very good. So in terms of performance, in terms of PoE and temperature working scenarios, you'd get this one. So for these medium projects and large projects, you can get even transmission distance of up to 20 kilometers. So those are quite nice. So 15 to 20 kilometers, and you still get good speeds. For cases where you do indoor applications, so before I talked about application of wireless devices in maybe elevator cases. So one of our projects that we done locally here, we had elevator control using such small these one wireless devices. So they are easy to connect. So this one of them was placed at the elevator vehicle on top of it. The other one was at the slab for the machine room. And the speeds are, you can see also, it can reach even up to Gbps. Okay, so whilst I was talking about also the application side, we have elevators, we have buildings, we have in a community side, we have bus station. So maybe someone can brainstorm, how can we apply wireless devices in bus stations? So in energy side and transportation in temples, it's at farms, especially farms, that's very good. So examples of project photos that we have done with wireless. So you can see such cases. This one. So you can see this one is a wireless device here. You can check it. So we have wireless device here and other accessories that we talked about before in our training about the power distribution box, this one. So also masked with our wireless devices. Okay. So this one also a wireless device. I think this one's a border control site. So the project is not mentioned exclusively, but it looks like a remote site in maybe a mining site. So we have completed on these wireless transmission devices. So just for the certification purposes, just get to know the basics of the naming. So the important thing is the naming rule. So if you know the naming rule, the other things will be easier. So just be able to identify the PoE ports, maybe which layer of switch, which layer does this switch operate in, maybe layer 2, layer 3, is it managed or not managed, etc. So we'll meet next week for the other part of the training. So next week we're going to continue on the training on Friday. So next week we're going to cover MPT and security screening products. Sorry, not this one. So next week we're going to cover video intercom that we have. So we're going to know naming products, which video intercom to use, what features they have, then also access control. So I'll look for this slide because it's 0. So we'll do access control, alarm products. As much as we're not selling the alarm products locally here in Kenya, we have countries where we have alarm products, but we'll get to know what they are, so that maybe in the future we're going to do alarm systems, we'll be able to have a prior knowledge on the same. Then we think we'll be 3/4 way in the theory part. Then we'll do the configuration now. So the configuration, operation, and troubleshooting will come in later. We'll cover. So in sessions of about a 6 to 8 session will be done with the theory. Now we can organize the process for examination and certification part of it. So if in case there's no any question or concern, we're going to end the presentation at this point. So thank you for those of us who joined us, and I look forward to meeting you in the other next week's training. So the video will be uploaded online. So if you need to do reference on the same, need to check. I'll send the videos in YouTube. Okay, have a lovely week.